Hey everyone, Doc here. I hope you're all doing well. Lately, I've been seeing some requests to share some of my builds with you guys, and I would be happy to do just that. The most requested one so far has been this little solo build that can be seen in some of my videos, so I figured I'd just go ahead and start there. I don't want to take up too much of your time with this intro, so let me just give a couple quick disclaimers and then I'll go ahead and jump right into the build. Firstly, this build is not really meant for endgame group content. It should work just fine in pretty much everything, though I probably wouldn't bring it into something like vet trials or DLC hard mode dungeons. The second is that this build could probably be tuned to be a little bit better or adapted to fit your playstyle better. So know that you don't have to copy mine exactly as it is. This build is just meant to be something simple that a healer can use whenever they need to do some solo content or DPS for something a little more casual. Okay, let's just go ahead and jump right into this. So firstly, we will start with the bread and butter of every build, sets. For this build, since it is a heavy attack build, I've got the Oaken Soul Ring, 1 piece Slimecraw, 5 pieces of Sergeant's Mail, and 5 pieces of Noble Duelist. Now you don't have to use Noble Duelist if you don't want to. Storm Master or Deadly Strike are also fantastic sets that you can use here. I personally think though that Noble Duelist is really strong, and the whole being in melee range that you need to proc it is actually deceptively long. I want to say the melee range is something around 7 meters, which is honestly farther than you'd think. Again though, you do have alternatives if you want. I just like Noble Duelist. For the armor weight, I use 1 medium helmet, 1 heavy chest, and the rest is light. I like the extra protection and resources from the Undaunted passive for solo play. Is it necessary? Probably not, but sustain won't really be an issue on this build anyway, so, just kind of do with that what you will. You want these traits for the armor pieces to be in all divines and all have a magicka enchantment. For jewelry, I use the bloodthirsty trait and spell damage enchantments, and for our weapon you'll want to use a lightning staff, and I use the precise trait. When it comes to weapon enchantments, I personally like weapon and spell damage, but crushing is another really great option if maybe your penetration is a little too low or if you just prefer that. Next, let's talk about some of the miscellaneous stuff. So for our race, it doesn't really matter. You'll see me on Breton, but that's because I'm a healer. If you're making this build with DPS in mind, and you're maybe making a separate character for it, I'd personally recommend using a High Elf, Dark Elf, or Khajiit. Just kind of look at the racial passives and see what, fits you best. For attributes, you'll want all 64 in Magicka. For our Mundus, I like the Thief Mundus, though you could also use the Lover if you feel like your penetration is a little bit too low. For potions, you can kind of just use whatever you want. I recommend Heroism or Spell Damage. You can also just keep some health potions on hand if you're jumping into something where you'll take a lot of damage. I usually end up having Tri-Stat on by default because Zos kind of gives out these things like candy, and I'll be honest, man, I always forget to use them. And for our food, also, again, pretty much just whatever you like. I'd recommend choosing something that can increase your maximum magicka and maybe even your max health too. Some crown fortifying meals or jugged rabbit preserves should do the trick for this specific build, and they're really easy to get. In this gameplay, I'm actually running Witch Mother's Potent Brew, but that was just from, some leftover from when I was doing some healing. Next, let's talk about champion points. So my recommendations are going to be as follows. For our blue CP tree, we're going to want Deadly Aim to increase our single target damage, Fighting Finesse to increase our crit damage and healing, Master at Arms to increase our direct damage, and Weapons Expert to increase our light and heavy attack damage. For our red CP tree, we're going to want Boundless Vitality for some extra health, Fortified for some extra armor, Slippery to keep free of CC, and lastly, I'm going to kind of divide this up. If you're running solo, I'd personally recommend Celerity for the extra movement speed, but if you're running in a group, I'd personally recommend Spirit Mastery so you can revive your teammates a little faster. For our green CP tree, it doesn't really matter, honestly. You can use whatever you want. If I were to make a couple of suggestions, though, I would say that Steed's Blessing and Rationer are going to be extremely helpful for you. And finally, on to our skills. Now, the skills you choose will depend pretty heavily on your chosen class, obviously. In the footage you're seeing, I'm running this on my Nightblade, though this build does work on every class. If you're using this build in solo content, you'll want to put a bit more focus into debuffing the enemy and self-healing. Oaken Soul should cover most of your buffs, so that allows you to focus on using skills that will reduce the enemy's armor or just generally make them take more damage. In terms of self-healing, I find that one heal over time skill is usually going to be enough to get you through most content. I usually like to make sure that that healing skill I chose can also hit both me and my companion, but that's just personal preference. You may not even use a companion, so totally up to you. Lastly, this is just another personal preference thing. Do with this information what you will. I usually try to bring at least one skill that can give me some sort of movement speed buff. When running through quests and delves and whatnot, having some form of minor or major expedition can really help cut down on the travel time. And finally, if you're running this in group content, I'd focus mostly on applying damage over time skills to your enemy to give you a bit of extra damage while you're heavy attacking. You may consider bringing a self-heal depending on the content, but your healer should be able to take care of most of the incoming damage, and your tank should be able to cover a good bit of the debuffing. Okay, well I think that should be about everything. I hope you all enjoyed this little guide, and again, this is not a perfect build. I am a healer first and foremost. This build was just meant to help me get through solo content quickly and easily. There's always room for improvement and customization, so feel free to copy me exactly or put your own spin on it. Other than that, I apologize that it did take me so long to post something for you guys. I was on vacation this past week and I thought that I'd have more time to work on some videos, and it turns out I actually had less. I've got a good bit of content planned though for the remainder of the year and into early next year as well. So definitely don't forget to subscribe and follow me on my socials if you want to keep up with that. And finally, I think all I've got left to say is that I've been Doc. Take care of yourselves, be good to others, don't forget to repair your armor, and I will catch y'all in the next one.